Okay, good morning, colleagues. Welcome to the number 22nd Tourism Online Forum series in August 2023. This series is hosted by the Center for Advanced Tourism Research, CATS, at Hokkaido University. This is your host, Mo. Today, we are very honored to have Dr. Rie, or we call her Usui Sensei, to share her recent research. The topic is unification or exclusion, community engagement in Usakatsu, and the implementation of a new management system for rabbit tourism at Ōkunoshima Island, and we also know this island as a rabbit island. I would like to introduce Usui Sensei. Usui Sensei is an assistant professor of College of Sustainability and Tourism at Ritsumeikan Asian Pacific University, what we know as APU, very international university in Oita, Japan. She earned her PhD from Hiroshima University in 2019. Her primary research interest lies in the intersection of tourism and human-animal studies. She has investigated into a range of topics concerning wildlife tourism in Japan as well as China, including wildlife tourism management, wildlife tourist experiences, and the impact of wildlife tourism development on community and human-animal relationships. Some of her works has been featured in local and national TV programs, newspapers, and online news outlet. So please notice that this online lecture will be recorded and uploaded to the forthcoming YouTube channel of Center for Advanced Tourism Research. If you have any question and comments, you can leave at the comment Q&A box anytime. So now let's invite Usui Sensei to share her lecture. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mo Sensei. Mo Sensei and I actually have been friends since we were in a PhD students, so I probably call Mo Sensei, Mo-san, or Mo during the presentation. But yeah, it's really nice to be invited to give a presentation on my research today. And yeah, Mo actually introduced me very nicely, and I have that second slide as my introduction, but I think I can skip most of it. So like he mentioned, my research really sits within tourism studies and human-animal interaction studies. So I've been interested in kind of wildlife tourism management or animal-based tourism management, anything that related to tourism and animals. So where tourism and animals intersect is where I've been conducting my research. And some past and also current fieldwork sites that I have worked is that macaque tourism site that I have a picture right here. So this is where kind of my interest in studying animal-based tourism started. So as a master's student, I went to China for 2 months, and I studied how monkeys are managed at the on-site level. So how park rangers, they're managing the monkeys and tourist interactions. And I was originally interested in primates, but my focus kind of sort of not shifted, but more kind of wide range of, I started studying wide range of animals, not just the monkeys, but I came back to Japan in 2014, and I studied or did research on deer and tourism at Miyajima Island, and you probably know Miyajima Island, and also Yakushima Island. I was looking at how tourism development have sort of changed the human and deer relationship on both islands. And this was my PhD work, but as a sort of side project, I started looking at Ōkunoshima's rabbit tourism sometimes in 2016. So during my PhD research. So aside from my PhD research, I started going to Ōkunoshima Island, and they have this kind of unique case of feral animal tourism. This has become my kind of current main research topic, and today I'm going to be introducing more like a management side of this rabbit tourism at Ōkunoshima Island, but I'm trying to include this community aspect in my presentation. So this research, before I'm going to talk about the Rabbit Island case, I want to sort of position my research in the tourism studies. So this research sits within the animal-based tourism, and animal-based tourism is characterized by direct interactions with non-human animals, which can take place in natural, semi-natural, unconfined environments. So, well, you can see it in this figure. There's a wide range of animals in the captive, from the captive to wild settings. So there is a diverse interactions and also forms of animal-based tourism that exists in the world, not just in Japan, but in the world. And some examples include wildlife viewing. You can probably guess what it is. It's like basically going to in the more natural settings, and you just observe wildlife or wild animals. And also entertainment settings and transportation. So animals can be a means of transportation. You might ride elephants or camel. And our engagement with animals can be in different forms, which is the culinary engagement, animals can be a consumption when you travel. So there is a diverse forms of animal-based tourism. And there has been more like a new sort of instance of animal tourism, animal-based tourism, which focuses on feral animals. And feral animals, here I define it as they were once domesticated animals, but they're currently exist without structured human supervision. And there are some cases in Japan, include the Rabbit Island, which I'm going to talk about in this presentation, but also what's called cat islands throughout Japan, such as Kashirojima Island in Miyagi Prefecture, Aoshima Island in Ehime Prefecture, Ōkunoshima Island in Fukuoka Prefecture. And also in Hiroshima, there's Onomichi City, which is actually famous for city of like lots of feral cats in the city. And when you go to the overseas, there are some cases that's they talked about in the publication, like research. There are some feral horses in North America. And there is also feral pigs in the Bahamas. So tourists actually get to swim with the feral pigs at the beach. So that has become very popular tourist attractions. And what's kind of shared background to these emergence of feral animal tourism is that many of them are social media induced and tourist driven. This really means that the community who live in that destination, they are not necessarily trying to develop animal-based tourism or feral animal tourism, but it actually was tourist was initiated, and through social media, they found this like unique place of a cat island or rabbit island, and they saw these islands or destinations on social media. Potentially, they started coming to these destinations. So, you know, these communities may have a very little potential of developing tourism. They have sort of became international. Some of them became international destinations sort of over time, all of a sudden. And initially, when I started looking at the case at Ōkunoshima Island, so the Rabbit Island, I wanted to find out why tourists come to this island, because animals such as rabbits and also cats, they're not unique necessarily, like unique animals. So they are like domesticated animals, and we have seen them. Maybe in some of you may have cats and rabbits as a pet. So I wanted to actually know why tourists actually come see these animals to this island. And based on my research using the Rabbit Island case, I found out that tourists seek for more like entertainment rather than looking for more aesthetic nature of these animals. And these animals also become iashi, so healing power to these tourists. And in the case of Ōkunoshima Island, the island can be characterized as a petting zoo. And petting zoo, definition of petting zoo is that it allows visitors to have direct physical contact with domesticated or semi-domesticated animals, which often involved feeding. And this is exactly what is happening on the Rabbit Island. Tourists come to the island, they can have closer interaction with the rabbits. They can touch, they can even, if they want, they can hold the rabbits and through the feeding. And so this paper is, this is my study. In this paper, I explored the tourist experience. So who come to the Ōkunoshima Island, what they're actually experiencing on the island through the analysis of TripAdvisor comments. And for the Japanese reviews, or reviews written in Japanese, they have this keyword of iashi, healing. Whereas reviews written in English, I found that there's not many like a term iashi or like anything related to healing, but they seem to see the island as more like adventurous place. So when I get started this research, I was first looking at the why tourists are coming to Ōkunoshima Island. And this type of tourist-driven animal tourism, or tourist-driven, in the case of feral animal tourism, this can be opportunities to develop tourism and maybe empowering the community. So it can also be a threat if the management is, there's no management. And has been a mixed findings to tourist-driven animal tourism development in the context of cat islands in Japan. Some communities found it, they actually accepted their destination, their community as a cat island, whereas others tend to kind of stay away. They don't want to become a cat island. So there's some mixed findings from the cat island. And in the case of rabbit tourism on Ōkunoshima Island, this is probably the only case in Japan with the rabbit on the island, rabbit tourism. The response so far has been, they're just taking the opportunity. So rabbit has become tourism resources. Feral rabbits became a tourism resources, and they are used to develop tourism. But so the scope of this presentation is really to investigate how this rabbit tourism was made possible. As interested in this presentation, I'll be looking at the management side rather than maybe tourist needs. But while I was doing the field work there, I found like a group, or not really a group of people, but individuals who are carrying a stroller or like a wheeled cart, and they call themselves Usakatsu, which really means rabbit activities. So it's a combined word with usagi katsudo. So usakatsu, it's like a shukatsu, it's shoku katsudo, it's shukatsu. And they call it usakatsu. They're doing usakatsu on the island. And I began kind of investigating these people who are doing the usakatsu on the island. And my research, this is ongoing research and looking at the management sort of aspect of the island. And recently there is a new management system that was implemented on the island. So in this presentation, I'll be mainly presenting these two kind of management aspect of the island. So that's the scope of this presentation. And the method of the data is came from my fieldwork since 2016, and this is a single case study at Ōkunoshima Island. So I did conduct stakeholder interviews and also questionnaires with the Ministry of the Environment, and also some local peoples who owns business and also who works as a volunteer tour guides. This is different from Usakatsu, and some rabbit enthusiasts, including Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts, Ōkunoshima Usagi Mimamoridai, there's another group, and Ōkunoshima Mirai Supporters. This is supporters under the new system. And I also attended a workshop in 2019, and also there was a symposium which was organized by MOE, Ministry of the Environment. So these are before the pandemic. So now I'm going to dive into Ōkunoshima Island case, and probably some of you may not know Ōkunoshima Island, so I'm going to provide some basic information and brief history about the island and how tourism was developed on this island, and some issues as a result of tourism boom. And in number 4, I'll be talking about the management of Ōkunoshima Island, mainly divide them into 2 different phases. One is a period of neglection, what I call neglection, and emergence of Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts. And the second part is more recent action by the MOE towards collaborative management, ? And I will just conclude with my preliminary findings at the end. So here is a map of Ōkunoshima Island. Don't have, here's the, yeah. So in Japan, there's Ōkunoshima Island is in the Hiroshima Prefecture in the Seto Inland Sea. And you can get, this is a remote island, so, but it's quite accessible from once you get to Tadanomi Seaport. You can access to the island by speedboat or ferry in just under 10 minutes. So yeah, it's quite accessible, but it is still away from the major city like Hiroshima City. Usually international tourists, they get off at the Mihara Shinkansen station and they would transfer and get to Tadanomi station, then switch to the Tadanomi, to the ferry or speedboat from Tadanomi Seaport. And there is an interesting history about this island. So during the, or before the rabbit tourism boom, this island was actually known as the island which was removed from the map because of its wartime history. So during the wartime, the island was used as a military, secret military base, and they're producing poisonous gas on the island. So no one really was supposed to know this, island exists, and even the workers, they didn't know what they're making, or community people in Tadanomi community, they didn't know what they were making as well. And for that reason, the island itself was actually removed from the map. So I grew up in Hiroshima, and I visited this island before the rabbit tourism boom during high school and middle school. And I just knew this island as the island was removed from the map. So that's another term or another name for Ōkunoshima Island. So there is a dark history, and these ruins still remains throughout the island. So once you arrive on the island, you will see some remaining on the island. And then you see this, like you can see this rabbit in the picture. So there is kind of really contrast of, you know, cute rabbit, fluffy rabbit, and there's a dark history on the island. So it's quite interesting view here. And after the war, the island was made more of a recreational site. And it was included in the Seto Naikai National Park in 1950. And this national vacation village was established in 1960. And because there are remaining of the poisonous gas facilities and also poisonous gas museum, the island, a lot of school kids came to the island and they learned about the history. So it was used as an educational site as well. And throughout the island, there are some like recreational facilities like Cucumber Hotel. So there's only one hotel where tourists can stay overnight. There's a visitor center, poisonous gas museum, tennis courts, even though it is not really maintained well. There's beaches, so during summer time, it got warmer time, and there's camping. People can do camping, and people can come for swimming at the beach. So it's becoming more recreational site. And the hotel workers are the ones who are residing, living on the island, and there is no residents, so community resident on this island. And they also, the hotel workers, the one who maintain the site. So the island is quite small, so areas 0.7 square kilometers. So these Ōkunoshima Island became a recreational site, but it was kind of really not known for, you know, people in overseas or even outside of Hiroshima prefecture. But there has been a change since 2014. There's the tourist numbers started to increase. So this is the graph of a tourist number. And as you can see, in 2016, the number kind of more than doubled. And what's also interesting on the island is that international tourists number increased exponentially. So it was maybe less than 1,000 international tourists per year. It was prior to the boom, so before 2014. But it reached to 19,000 in 2016. So this site became more international tourist destinations. But still many more Japanese compared to, like, if you compare the number, more Japanese comes. But when you think about how like regional communities in Japan, they struggle to attract international tourists, this island is the case where international tourists, they started coming without really promoting the island. So that's the how the development of this tourism on the island. And the rabbits, of course, they are primary attraction for these tourists. And yes, I already mentioned that, so I won't be playing this video, but if you go to YouTube and just type in Rabbit Island, you will see tons of videos related to Ōkunoshima Island and how people interact with these rabbits. So after the rabbit tourism boom, there has been changes in types of tourists. So I already mentioned there's been internationalization of tourist profiles, which is a little different from other regional communities, maybe in Japan. And also used to be the island tourists were mainly male tourists who want to learn about the war history, but now more younger generations are attracted to coming to the island, visiting the island, and including females and also family with the children. And if you look at the Taranami seaport, there's some new shops began selling some rabbit-related products. So far, there's not much positive effect in the community. The obvious kind of change or transformation that we can see is the Taranami ticketing office in this picture. So they seem to, change a lot before and after the tourism boom. And so they started they renovated the building, and they have did well on the branding of their products. So people who, tourists who come to the island, they want to see the rabbits, but they also want to feed rabbits. This is based on my very early on survey that I conducted with tourists, but 77% of tourists reported that they want to, not just to see the rabbits, but they want to feed the rabbits. And when you go to the island, you see a lot of tourists bringing carrots, cabbage, or they bring a bag of pellets. So they are bringing a lot of rabbit food from outside of the island, because on the island there's no rabbit food that's sold. So they have to bring from outside of the island. But you can probably imagine that this feeding the animals, especially free-ranging animals in wild, can cause some issues. And this is actually the summary of issues that Ōkunoshima is experiencing. And I will just point out some important ones here. The first issue is the poor rabbit welfare. And what was reported is that there's been ecosystem and sort of animal welfare issues. So as a result of feeding, the rabbit number has increased, and its population in 2019 was reported to be, or estimated to be, around 900. And this is quite a lot of rabbits for very small area. And there has been a report on some damages to the island vegetation. These rabbits dig holes underground, so they also make like a cause of vegetation. They would eat the vegetation, but they would also make like a damage under the ground as well. And zoonotic disease transmissions, so between the rabbits themselves, there's no report from disease transmission from the rabbit to humans, but there has been a concern about disease transmission from humans to rabbits and vice versa. And this was in 2019 study reported that about a quarter of the rabbit populations suffer from illness and injuries. And this tourist food actually was reported to contribute to rabbits' illness and short lifespan, because some tourists bring inappropriate food to the rabbits, and rabbits their health may be affected by it. And tourists are the source of food, so they are not coming the same number of tourists don't come every day, so there's inconsistency in the number of tourists coming every day, which means there's inconsistency in the amount of food that is provided by the tourists. And this has caused some unhealthy situation to the rabbits. And there's a common cause of death on the for the rabbits on the island is a gastrointestinal status. This is basically the dysfunction of digestive system of the rabbits. So here are some pictures that I took on the island. Some rabbits exhibit, obvious sort of health issues like tumor. They have injuries and skin diseases. So injuries can be caused as a result of overpopulation of the rabbits. And another issue is the excess food. So some tourists bring a lot of food that rabbits can't even eat, or because many tourists come to the island, rabbits are already full. And once you get there, the rabbits might be too full to eat your food. So what tourists do is they do what they call okiesa. So it refers to the food left for rabbits, thinking that, oh, rabbits would probably eat these food later. But that's not always the case. And this food, excess food, is attracting boars, rats, and crows. So some undesired animals or unintended animals. And so these became an issue. And another issue is this is before the COVID, but there has been report on the over tourism situation. High tourist season is in May and August, and also weekends. And in 2019, some tourists couldn't go back to Taranami Station, so the mainland. So they were left on the island, and the congestion is one of the issues there. And accidents has been reported. The tourists can rent a bicycle and they can go around the island, but there has been a collision with the rabbits. And also Kyukamura, the hotel, let the tourists rent like a fishing rod. So these fish lines were entangled in the rabbits, and these became an issue on the island. And maybe this is the last one, but abandoned pets have been reported to be an issue. Some people would bring their pet rabbits, thinking that they can survive on the island, because the island is called like rabbit heaven sometimes. So they would think, okay, it's good for their pet rabbits. They can no longer keep. But that's not really the case. And also some people bring rabbit from outside of the island. That's a different issue, but they're bringing in different rabbits inside, and also they take rabbits outside of the island. And water bowls, these are found throughout the island. I'm going to explain about why there are water bowls, who left the water bowls, but Minister of the Environment, they found it for them that this water bowl is causing problem on the island. So these are maybe some of the many problems that are reported on the island and around the island. So let's talk about the management. Is there any management actions on the island? So as I mentioned this, did I mention? Yeah, I think I mentioned, but Ōkunoshima Island is a Seto Naikai National Park. So nearly entire area of the island falls under the jurisdiction of MOE. So they own the land and they have the right to decide the management policy, or they have a power to decide the management policy. And since, I guess, 2016, conducting the research there, there's not much management actions at the beginning. So this period is what I call the period of ignorance. And after 2018, there has been some actions that are by the MOE, and things are starting to change a little bit. And in the second period is what I call the towards more collaborative management. So I'm gonna talk about how this, I'm just going to divide into these two periods and talk about what's happening in this period 1 and period 2 for the rest of my presentation. So this is the period of ignorance. So what ignorance really means is that tourist-rabbit interactions. So they were feeding the rabbits, but MOE didn't really say anything about, they're not regulating these interactions. So these interactions are left unregulated. So MOE would say we don't encourage feeding, but at the same time, they never like discourage feeding. So there's no really structured management entity on the island. And this is because Ōkunoshima's rabbits, they are categorized as an alien species. So this type of rabbits on the island is European rabbits, and European rabbits are not from Japan originally. They were brought to Japan in the 18th century. So they are alien species, considered alien species. And it is listed as a second urgent measurement of Japanese Invasive Alien Species Act, which is right here, kai usagi or ana usagi. So this has likely become an obstacle for making any management decision whether they should, use the rabbits as a tourism resource, because they probably under this law they shouldn't be on the island. So because there's a period of ignorance, there was uncertainty about the rabbits' fate. So people didn't know whether rabbits are going to be eradicated or they are going to be just, kept on the island. So eventually there's emergence of Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts as a result of no management entity. People started doing something for the rabbits. So let me talk about who are Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts. Usakatsu, I already explained, this is the Japanese and it's activities for rabbits. And how you can know who Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts is that they have some, characteristics when you see them. First, they usually have wheeled carriers, and they carry rabbit food. And of course, the tourists also carry rabbit food. So there's not much difference there, but what's, I guess, significant in the Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts, they carry water jugs. So water, they have water. They carry water, and they're Usakatsu. And some have small shovels or water bowls. So they bring this kind of a set of taking care of rabbits. So this is their kind of items on the island. And also some have blogs or SNS. They have Instagram and they have YouTube account, and they would share the information about the island. And in 2018, I contacted these Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts, trying to find out what they do. And I found 14 active blogs in 2018, and I sent to questionnaires to 12 bloggers. I received 8 responses. 3 of them did not have blogs. But what I'm going to report from the next slide is based on this survey that I conducted with the 8 respondents. And respondents' demographic information, so there are 4 males and 4 females. They're mostly in the age of 40s and 50s. And what was interesting is that 3 of them coming from kind of nearby area, so Hiroshima and Ehime. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, they came from Osaka, like Kansai region and Kanto region. So these Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts, they are coming not just from the Hiroshima, but they are also coming from other areas in Japan. And this table shows, basically ask like what time, when did you first come to the island, and when did you start Usakatsu, and how long have you been doing Usakatsu, and how often they come to the island to do Usakatsu, and also the length of stay per visit, each visit, how long they stay when they come, and how much like money they spent. Out of so 4 out of 8 respondents, they started Usakatsu before the tourism boom. So, and then these A, B, C, and H, they started after the tourism boom. And some of them spend like 70,000 Japanese yen, quite a lot of money like every time they come. So if they're coming from, of course, Tokyo, they have to stay a little bit longer. And Ōkunoshima is the only hotel that they can stay, especially during the winter season. So they have to pay a lot of money. But they come like once a month, quite frequently to the island. So what they do on the island when they come, Usakatsu routine is they say they work from 8 a.m. until quite late at night, 11 p.m. But this includes lunch and dinner break. Their main activity or main purpose of being there is to provide fresh water to the rabbits. There's no natural water on the island, so they come to the island to provide water, change the water bowl and such, clean the water bowl. And if necessary, they would provide more like a supplemental like food to the rabbits. And they also collect garbage that tourists left. Sometimes they patrol for some suspicious person. Not exactly know what kind of people are there. But they also warn tourists if they engaged in undesired behavior with the rabbits, like holding the rabbits or like kicking the rabbits. And if they see the dead rabbits, they would bury the rabbit bodies. So these are Usakatsu activities when they come to the island. So Usakatsu is basically they are making up for what tourists have done, and some problem that it caused. So if tourists give too many pellets, rabbits get thirsty, so they have to provide water. If tourists give too many like vegetables, these food are too soft for the rabbits, they shouldn't be eat as a primary diet. It caused the misalignment of the teeth, so they would provide grass to kind of balance it out. If tourists leave lots of food behind, become the garbage and also attract predatory animals. So Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts, they would clean up this garbage. If tourists try to hold or chase rabbits, can be a cause of injuries. So Usakatsu, they monitor these tourists and they warn them not to engage in such interactions. So just to summarize in visually what this Usakatsu activity really, Usakatsu people really do is that when tourists are here to enjoy like feeding rabbits, But Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts, their main work is to provide water. And if they see a dead body, they would bury the rabbits. And Usakatsu, they also monitor tourist behaviors. So they act kind of like on-site management workers, but it's not organized. These are more like individual activity. And after they visit, they usually share what happened during their visit to the SNS, social media. So others can, so it can also raise awareness to like potential tourists or tourists who have already visited the island. And it can also be sharing platforms. So share some updates about what happened on certain days. And so other Usakatsu and rabbit enthusiasts who are not there on the island that day, they can kind of keep being updated on what's happening on the island. So Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts are self-organized volunteer tourists. And so they act like park rangers, which really means they regulate and they monitor tourists' interaction with the rabbits. And they also try to raise awareness. So they act like more educational. They engage in some educational activities as well. And what they do could be vital to rabbit survival on the island for maintaining like a rabbit good welfare, because they are providing water. But the problem is these Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts, even though they consider themselves as Usakatsu, they call themselves as Usakatsu, not all of them, they're not working towards like one specific goal. They don't share the same goal. And so there are some subgroups within Usakatsu. So some groups are formed and disformed as the time passes, because there can be a conflict between the Usakatsu themselves. And some also cause some conflicts with the regular visitors because they're so enthusiastic about helping the rabbits. They would maybe sometimes make the regular visitors mad by confiscating the food that regular tourists have, fed to the rabbits. So there is a conflict between Usakatsu and rabbit enthusiasts and regular visitors. And even though Usakatsu activities can work as a management action, but it is still limited to just to mitigate the situation. It's not an ultimate solution of these issues on the island. And overpopulation of rabbits and these problems that I previously introduced, these were features and talked about on the national and local TV and newspaper in 2019. And that's when finally Ministry of the Environment began kind of taking actions about the rabbit management on the island. So the rest of the presentation is about more MOE's involvement in the management of the rabbit tourism. So towards collaborative management. In 2018, MOE did data collection on rabbit population and health condition. They did stakeholder interviews, and they conducted tourist questionnaires just to get the basic information about the island or understand the situation on the island. And in 2019 is when they held the stakeholder meetings. It's a series of workshops in 2019. And they, MOE officially declared that the island's rabbit will not be eradicated. So they basically accepted rabbits, even though they are alien species, they're gonna be maybe accept as a tourism attraction or resources. In 2020, because of the pandemic, a lot of tourists stopped coming to the island, which means not enough food for the rabbits. So the rabbit population dropped. So in 2019, it was estimated to be around 900 rabbits living on the island. But yeah, 2020, it's probably dropped around 300 due to the pandemic. And in 2022, so this was last year, Ōkunoshima Mirai Supporter System. This is a new system. It was implemented, and MOE also did some campaigns like take back excess food. And this is the poster or flyer about, let's take back the garbage. And here is a flyer that for recruiting the supporters in it was early 2022. So how is this Ōkunoshima Mirai Supporter System? It's a new system, is working toward more sustainable management at Ōkunoshima. So this Mirai Supporters is actually located just there's an Ōkunoshima Mirai Executive Committee. This is where all these issues will be discussed among the major stakeholders. And they set the subcommittees, like a rabbit subcommittees, promotional subcommittees, and tourism subcommittees. So supporters, Mirai supporters, they don't just belong to like one subcommittees, but they are supposed to be the supporter for all these. So whatever like decision they made in this committee, they need to support. And there are currently 52 registered supporters. And there's one Usakatsu rabbit enthusiast who is also a member of this committee. She was registered as, or she applied as Mirai supporter. So she's in both committee. She's a supporter and as well as a committee member. And the current supporter system started in April 2022, and it only goes until March 2024. So this is a fixed, like 2-year term supporter system. So those who are registered, they work as a supporter until March 2024. And criteria for registration or application, there's not much, there's no strict criteria as long as people are interested in nature, history, or tourism of Ōkunoshima Island, and eager to help solve the problems identified, they can just be registered as a supporter. Initially, there are 61 applicants. 9 applicants decided to decline to be registered after orientation and guidance. And the guidance was held online. And they talked about Ōkunoshima Island's basic information. And they also watched the national park video. And there was hospitality training during the guidance. And once people registered, the supporters, they are required to wear a badge when they work as the supporters on the island. So that's the supporters, what the supporters have to do. And yeah, this is my last slide, so I should be good on time. Because I'm still conducting interview, this is quite ongoing research, especially about the new system. So I'll just finish my presentation with my preliminary findings about whether this new system is effective or not so far. And so far, the new system has found to be not so effective. And there are some obstacles that needs to be gets overcome. And this new system was, even though it was supposed to solve the issues of the island, this was actually intended to mitigate Usakatsu rabbit enthusiasts and tourists conflicts. So supporters, as a supporter, they can have sort of a power, authoritative power, because they have name tag when they warn tourists. So that can be a benefit to register as a supporter. But some tourists actually got mad when they saw the name tag, and they ended up calling the MOE office. So there's, event like this, and there's also unclear policy. So for supporters that I interviewed, they said they don't know what to do as a supporter. There has been not really much activity. There's only 2 events so far. There's no events on the regular basis, and maybe 3 out of 4 said that they no longer wear a supporter name tag. So the only supporter job for them is to like warn tourists for if they see some undesired interactions. So that's the only time, some people wear that name tag, some people don't wear a name tag. And there's also no really ways for supporters to connect with each other. So they don't know who's registered as a supporter unless they participated in like the past event. So there is no potential communication among the supporters. And another thing is that one person can be a supporter and also Usakatsu rabbit enthusiast at the same time. So they would play 2 sort of contradicting roles. Supporters are not supposed to feed and give water to rabbits, but they can do that as long as they don't wear the supporter name tag. So these are some issues or obstacles that needs to be overcome in order to make the system more effective. And yeah, with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation. And here is the reference. And thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much for your very long project, right? Before I kind of follow your research, but this time I see a lot of new things. I think it's definitely this month is enough to edit a book, I think. Okay, now is the time for question and
Stop
comment.
sharing, or you want?
You can stop sharing. We can have a conversation mode. If there is any question, please raise up your hand or leave in the Q&A box. But before that, I would have some question first.
Okay.
So one is you mentioned about the both opportunity and threat. Would like to ask, nowadays the climate change, everybody can really feel it. So if does the climate change also impact on the rabbit population or management?
Well, I don't know how much, to what extent it is affecting, but rabbits are not, they're not good with the heat. I can see them during the summertime. Because I went there last week and I barely see the rabbits. It used to be tons of rabbits. You don't really have to look for the rabbits. Now they seem to either hiding in the shade or their population also. So that could be the heat can definitely affect the rabbits.
Okay, another very interesting from the paper you just showed before, I think you mentioned the conventional conservation-based wildlife tourism framework is not really suitable for this kind of feral rabbit encounters. So in your opinion, as a researcher across both tourism as well as ecological studies, what kind of a new framework we have to think about when we want to combine these two fields, both animal and tourism?
Yeah, I think, yeah, my approach is really about like, contextualizing the situation. In this case, if you basically apply the conservation framework, rabbits would, yeah, of course, they will be eradicated. They have to be eradicated, but we have to think about what we mean by, but we have to know the history and why rabbits ended up being there. And we also have to kind of ask ourselves again what we mean by alien species as well. So I think, yeah, it's not really a framework, but my approach really is to contextualize it and not see the like rabbits. Don't start from like a categorization of the animals. Okay. So yeah.
Right. Well, that's very interesting because you have both the knowledge between the animal study, right? Your master is related to that, but your PhD is more on the tourism side. Then you try to combine those two knowledge. I think that's very important for nowadays young scholars. And my last question is related to island kind of theory. It's more related to this kind of new landscape, the animal shape. Like we have the deer island, cats island, and rabbit island. So what the island background make this topic more unique compared with I just go to a rabbit village, that kind of feeling. So island is make it more interesting and more mixed landscape, like more utopia kind of feeling.
Yeah, definitely the utopia and like heaven or paradise. Okay. I was actually trying to look at that aspect and trying to compare the other like rabbit tourism site with non like island context and see how much of the, I guess, the locational feature affect imagination of, I guess, rabbit tourism or tourist experience. But I haven't really digged into that yet. But definitely island gives a lot of like image.
Yeah.
Or
I think maybe for the tourists, go travel through a ferry to an island to see rabbit is a mixed motivation. I think very exciting process. Maybe that's also quite interesting.
Also, what's mentioned in the TripAdvisor review is the term like Disney, like compared with the Disney. So, like people are going into a different sort of world once they hop on the ferry and experience kind of unusual, like a lot of rabbits on the island and just come back after like they came back to the ferry port. I think they're just going back to their regular life. But
yeah, so in that case, I think the island itself is some kind of method to captive those animals as well, right? Even you feel like it's open field, but it's very limited piece of land in the water. I see.
Maybe we could collaborate on that.
Yeah. I think there is no other question and comment. I think the student here is very shy compared with the APU probably.
Students, but they can ask me like questions through email or
Yes, that's also possible. And also after the video post on the YouTube channel, I guess student after the summer holidays, they will start to looking at it. Then they can contact you directly. Maybe before the end of our session, could you talk about a little bit of your future plans about this topic, research plans?
Well, well, this is quite an exploratory stage. I will be interviewing more supporters for the next, well, maybe this summer, and trying to develop my framework to, you know, write a paper. But yeah, I hope to, not just publish a paper, but I'm thinking about kind of making a system where animals also benefit. So if anyone's interested in collaborating on that, you know, it's like, oh, like human benefits, but rabbits, if there's any system that I can develop to benefit the rabbits as well. Yeah, that's my
Wow.
yeah, more like
So if you need more helps, you can also share me the information in future.
right.
If any student.
We can go to field work at Ōkunoshima with the Hokudai students.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's almost lunchtime. That's why a lot of people probably
just
feel
wanna
hungry.
grab lunch.
Okay, if anybody have any interest, both research or personal interest, please, contact Usui Sensei's email address. I think she showed in the previous slide.
Yeah, but I will just send it here.
Okay.
I don't know if this is.
Yes, wait, sorry. I think I will resend to everybody. Everyone, if you have any interest, please contact Usui Sensei for more information. And thank you very much for joining today's online lecture. I'm looking forward to see you again in future.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, have a great day. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, everybody. Bye.